Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast and get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Corina Fratila. She's an endocrinologist. Today's Kevin MD article is Are Psychedelics the Heroes or Villains? Corina, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We were talking offline that you last came on about 3 years ago. And for those who didn't listen way back then, just briefly share your story and journey.
I am Romanian. I am a physician. I went to a wonderful medical school in Bucharest, Romania. The residency exam after medical school was stolen, and all I did my whole life was study. So when this happened, I decided to start learning English, and I left Romania. That one particular residency exam was eventually canceled, but I still left because I wanted more from life than to work and have everything stolen from me, which was kind of like the story of a lot of people's lives in communist Romania. A lot of my friends and colleagues left for Europe, some for the United States, mostly Germany and France. But because Europeans in general have an attitude of discrimination towards people from poorer countries, I decided to leave Europe. It was heartbreaking. Then I arrived here, a completely new culture, the type of experience that makes you question all your cultural conditionings, all the beliefs that you grew up with, makes you realize they're all stories, grown, some of them over centuries. Some truths, yes, but mostly stories. How women should be, how men should be, how children should behave, how one needs to live one's life. Had to examine everything, dismantle what wasn't serving me, and adapt or create new beliefs that would serve me. Went through a pretty hard time when I was designing this belief system, but without role models or people to look up to, I couldn't really make a lot of sense of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Did my residency, my fellowship in New York at Albert Einstein, moved to Baltimore to be closer to the only relative I had in the United States, my sister, which subsequently went back to Romania. Started working in private practice with a group that was aligned to who I was at the time. Met my husband, started a family, have two beautiful 13-year-old daughters. Then 13 years into the private practice I was part of, I realized how much maybe this is a strong word, but it feels like the truth, how much I despise the American healthcare, or like Marianne Williamson says, the sick care system, the revolving door of the medical practice, the incessant prescribing of pharmaceuticals, and the absolute lack of interest in what might be the root cause of the most common conditions I was seeing in my medical practice. So all that gave me the idea that maybe I can start a different kind of practice, a holistic, integrative kind, where we always look for the root cause, where the relationships are important and valued, where the doctor is not a provider and the patient a consumer, but the doctor and the patient are partners in the healing journey that the patient decides to take. I decided that the authoritarian and paternalistic model was outdated, and I was going to practice differently. My practice was a great success, even during the pandemic when many practices and businesses had to close their doors. My practice was thriving and growing. I'm currently full and have a waiting list for my endocrine practice. But the one thing that I wanted to touch on, that the reason I wrote the article, is what happened during the pandemic. And I think that we are all carrying the consequences and still feeling the weight of the years of the pandemic, how disconnected we were from community, growing our children in isolation and fear, and how this has so many long-term consequences. I won't lie, I was very afraid. My children were 10 when the pandemic started, and it felt like the sky was falling, that there was no way to turn, that no one had any answers to this tragedy and catastrophe of epic proportions. So I needed a new framework. I needed to go deep and understand how we got here as humans. But just knowing history, biology, chemistry, pathology, physiology, geography, economics, math, and all these other things I studied in higher education didn't help me. I needed a framework to help me put everything together. So that's how I kind of started my journey into exploring the psychedelic realm.
All right. So your Kevin MD article is Are Psychedelics the Heroes and Villains? So tell us the next step. You gave a synopsis of your life story. Talk to us about the transition and your exploration of psychedelics.
Oh, thank you. So I think it all started. I read Charles Eisenstein's book, The More Beautiful World, Our Hearts Know It's Possible. And then I heard about Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind.
Mm-hmm.
I read that one too. And I felt like that's what I needed, exactly what I needed, a mind change, because my current, at the time, set of beliefs wasn't helping me understand and make sense of the world. I was wondering at the time, was I suffering from depression? Was I having like one long, relentless panic attack and I couldn't find my way out? It seemed like it wasn't just me, though. It was the whole world that was having one massive anxiety-induced seizure.
Mm-hmm.
Then, after reading these two books, I heard about this place in Costa Rica that was helping people kind of make sense of, what was going on in the world with help from indigenous traditions and plant medicine. I booked a retreat there in early 2021, but I was too afraid to go because it was, meeting with this supposedly very powerful plant spirit with the mother ayahuasca, and I was nowhere near being ready. So then I heard about this other place in the Netherlands, the Synthesis Institute, that was training people in the healing arts to become psychedelic guides. So I signed up. I was like, I need help. I need all the help I can get. Conventional medicine and psychiatry and psychology, they're not, helping me or, as far as I knew, anybody else in the world. So I needed to understand more and to kind of just expand my mind. So I signed up to become a psychedelic guide, and I did this almost a year and a half training in the Netherlands. Eventually, I flew to the Netherlands. I took a psychedelic in a very safe and legal way, in the hopes that all of these areas of my mind and all of these pieces of knowledge will come together to paint a picture that was intelligible. And I also felt like it was very necessary because I have children. I mean, honestly, I don't think any of this stuff, I would have done any of the stuff without having children, because I feel a huge responsibility towards the future and the legacy that I leave. And I feel like the legacy that I was leaving at that time was just desperation and fear. It was nothing, not a legacy of coherence. So through this training, I learned about all these healing modalities that have been around for some of them for thousands of years, but they have been pushed to the side for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories. I'm going to let everybody draw their own conclusions. And I met people from all over the world, all walks of life, all different backgrounds and fascinating histories. And I felt like if my life was a tiny creek humming along on its little creek path until then, now this tiny creek was turning into a river, expanding and deepening with all the experiences and the new friends. And I might even say wisdom, new wisdom, lots of new wisdom.
So tell me, after your psychedelic journey, how has that influenced you as a physician today?
Yeah, so I feel like my whole worldview shifted. I started asking bigger questions about my calling, my role as a human, my role as a physician, as a mother, our roles as humans in the ecosystem of the planet, our responsibility to future generations. I started asking questions about consumerism, interconnection, social justice, and all of a sudden the fabric of the human world became almost visible, much clearer. The way we built everything on exploitation and extraction, and how colonialism is literally the base of our existence. How patriarchy and the exploitation of women and the people of color, it's the spine of our existence. How conventional medicine has been built to keep people sick, essentially, and coming back for more prescription drugs than built to make people healthy. And we're not educating patients about food, about moving their bodies, about rest, community, connection to nature. So these are all things that I have started implementing and talking to patients more. I mean, I was always, since I started my practice, I consider myself integrative and holistic, and always talk about these things to my patients, but now it's literally all I want to do. I still prescribe medication every so often, but I'm trying to distance myself more and more from the way, conventional medicine is practiced.
So tell us about how you discuss psychedelics with patients. Are there specific patients that you would bring the topic up for? Are there specific conditions that psychedelics would lend themselves to? Tell us about how you incorporate that into your exam room.
So usually for patients who get stuck at certain points in their medical treatment, there's usually some sort of emotional block, some sort of belief, that's preventing them from moving forward with progress. And it's very interesting because a lot of patients who get stuck like that, they also have a huge resistance to either, seeing a psychologist or, acknowledging that there's some form of belief system that's in place that's preventing them. So I can't encourage the use of psychedelics at this point, except for what's legal, which is ketamine in the United States. There's always, the possibility of traveling to places where psychedelics are legal. So I emphasize, the legality of everything. And then I have this documentary that I recommend to patients to watch. It's pretty dramatic. It's about recoveries, significant recoveries that veterans, for example, make from PTSD. And, usually it's people with autoimmune diseases that respond really, really well to, some kind of PTSD treatment,
Sure.
if I may say. I mean, it's a long conversation. Obviously, I can't cover everything in just a few minutes, but I usually recommend just kind of start reading books, watching documentaries, kind of just opening the mind and expanding the consciousness to something else that might be possible for them. And when people get to see other people's experiences, people just like them, right? Or people that they consider just like them, they're much more open to maybe just saying, oh, if that was possible for that person, maybe it's possible for me. I mean, I know that this is how it worked for me with my role models. My role models were people that were very, in what I saw, very similar to, my life experience and very similar in their worldview. And then, they would be at what I thought was the next level. And I would be like, oh, they can do it, so can I. And that is possible, in every area of our life, not just in the workspace, but also for our health.
So you run a holistic endocrine practice. Tell us how some of these topics arise when you're talking about typical endocrine conditions. How do the patients open up to you, and how do you bring up these subjects outside of endocrine that may be amenable to psychedelics?
Yeah, so I make it clear from the first time I interact with the patient, which is the first email that I send, that I am very qualified. I am board certified. Actually, my board certification might expire this month, but I'm board certified in endocrinology. I've been board certified twice. I'm not planning to renew my certification, but I am as of now. And I'm very qualified in interpreting test results and, doing the conventional medical physical exam and just doing all the things that conventional medicine does. But I am very much into the mind-body paradigm, and that if we don't work on our beliefs, which are truly, our beliefs are what I see, as what I was telling my husband the other day, the genetic code of how we create our reality. And if we don't work on if we don't do the mind-body part work, then we're not going to end up having any results. So the patients are prepared, they know what they're getting into. And during the first appointment, usually I go do a complete review of their lifestyle, and then I have a few recommendations to make, about how to connect, how to be more embodied, how to be like, we're every day we were given this body, we never asked for it, but we were given it. And how do we connect? How do we maintain? How do we respect? How do we treat this body not like a rental car, which a lot of us do, oh, I got it, let me just use as much as I can and just give it back no matter what shape it's in, but treat it with respect, like it's, the body temple that, where our spirit lives in.
Are there any patients where psychedelics are a risk for them? Tell us the type of patients who may not be right for psychedelics.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question. There are people, for example, who are bipolar 1, who have serotonin imbalances according to conventional psychiatry that are definitely not qualified. People with a history of schizophrenia, sometimes people with very high blood pressure or heart conditions, depending on the heart condition. So yeah, of course, plant medicine is not the end all be all for all conditions, but it's very helpful specifically for people with depression or people with post-traumatic stress disorder, people who feel like they're stuck and they can't see a way out, or they can't see another possibility for their life.
We're talking to Corina Fratila. She's an endocrinologist. Today's Kevin MD article is, are psychedelics the heroes or villains? Corina, as always, will end with some of your take-home messages to the Kevin MD audience.
One of my favorite things is to talk to other physicians about what's possible, because it's extremely saddening for me to see how a lot of my physician friends are still stuck in jobs that they, like I said, the revolving door type of medicine. And, they're in their golden cage, squeezed between the administrators and insurance companies, and they feel like there's no way out. They don't enjoy practicing medicine anymore. They feel like they're just cash cows for the administrators. And I just want to say that, I don't know if you've ever heard that saying. I keep repeating it to everybody I meet, but it's called, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. Like literally, if you could do one thing today to forget about the fear and just let yourself imagine what's possible for your life, just do that, even if you do it for 1 minute. Because this, what's possible, it's incredible. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I'm just saying this because if I can do, and I can have this life that, I don't wake up in the morning, and I don't hate waking up and going to work. I actually love, and my husband's always like, there must be something wrong with you, because you love going to work. If that's possible, if that's possible for me, it's possible for you too. It's possible for anybody. You can be free to practice the way you envision practicing when you were still young and full of joy and dreams. And that's my take-home message.
Corina, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and insight. And thanks again for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.